Hi, I'm Eric Zaff. I am a curriculum writer at jteach.org, and I am also a proud Akiba Schechter parent. There is a semi-popular song from the end of the last century that says, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." And that seems especially relevant this week as we just finished reading the Torah on Simchat Torah. And what did we do immediately after finishing the Torah? We rolled back to the beginning and started all over again. And so from that end of the Torah, we start all over again with Bereishit, the first parsha, the first Torah portion from the Torah. And what happens in Bereishit? God creates the world. God says, "Let there be light." There's light. By the end of the sixth day, God says, "Let's create humans in our image." Lo and behold, there's the first human. Fast forward a little bit. There are now two humans, Adam, Chava, Adam and Eve, and they are living in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, God's paradise. And God says to Adam and Chava, "You can eat from anything that grows from the ground in Gan Eden. The plants, the fruits, the vegetables, it's all yours, no work involved, just eat it. Except for that tree over there. That tree over there, that tree is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. From that tree, you may not eat anything at all." Now, I don't want to get too much into why God would put a tree there and say, that one tree, don't eat from it. It is a question that has vexed commentators for centuries, and I encourage you to discuss that question over your Shabbat table or over the weekend family. Why would God put one tree in the Garden of Eden and say, Adam and Chava, don't eat from that? Right? Why would somebody put the one thing you can't have right in front of your face and say, this is the one thing you can't have? Oh, it's right here in front of you. Okay. But fast forward a little bit again, and of course, what happens? Adam and Chava eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, with a little encouragement from a snake along the way. God's not so happy about this and says, Adam, Chava, it's time for you to leave Gan Eden now. You ate from the one tree that I told you not to eat from. You have to leave now. But the question is, what was the big deal? Why would God kick them out? Why is this a problem? Now, many commentators have said, well, the real problem is, yes, God created people in God's image. But people are not supposed to be God. Knowing the difference between good and evil gets you too close to being God. That's a problem. God says, Adam and Chava, you can't do that. You have to leave. Something about that interpretation just doesn't quite work for me, though. Maimonides, one of the greatest philosophers ever, often considered by many the greatest thinker of the last millennium. He has an incredible chidush about what's really going on, an incredibly new insight into how to understand this. Maimonides says, no. What's going on here is that the difference between good and bad, that's actually on a lesser level. The real goal is knowing the difference between truth and false. Right? Knowing the difference between right and wrong. So for example, if I'm eating, and I have chocolate and I have broccoli, for Maimonides, the ideal would be, knowing the difference between true and false, right and wrong, I'm going to eat the broccoli, because the broccoli is the right thing to eat for me to be healthy. Chocolate, not so much. If I know the difference between good and bad, though, now I start making judgments. Chocolate tastes really good. Broccoli, less so. I want to start eating the chocolate instead. And therein lies the problem. When Adam and Chava eat from the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, what's the first thing they do? They realize they're naked. They're not wearing any clothes. They cover themselves up. They make a judgment that there's a problem with being naked. Nothing has changed in the reality. Right? The truth is, they were naked before. They're still naked, but they've made a value judgment. And that actually was the problem. The real punishment for them was not getting kicked out of Gan Eden. The real punishment was knowing the difference between good and bad instead of right and wrong. And that is where I think the real lesson is from this narrative. Knowing the difference between right and wrong is the real way that we try to approach the godliness that's within us. We can know the difference between good and bad, but sometimes what seems good for us might be the wrong thing to do. And something that seems bad for us might actually be the right thing to do. And aspiring to do what is right in the world, that is true aspiration towards godliness. Shabbat Shalom.